Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today is episode number 103. I'm super excited. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko, former immigration lawyer turned entrepreneur. I am the co founder of Laborless, which is an immigration tech company that automates H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which is a marketing agency within the immigration industry, and of course, which brings you this show. Today's episode is a really exciting one. We're going to be diving into sort of the nonprofit immigration tech space, which is unique and not as common as the sort of traditional, more for-profit kind of case management or now a lot of AI tools. So I'm really excited. Our guest today is Rodrigo Camarena, who is the director of Justicia Lab, which, frankly, I'm learning about today as well with a lot of you guys. I know a bit about the organization. I'm excited to learn more about it. So Justicia Lab is an umbrella organization that has a number of different immigration tech supported services for various individuals going through the immigration process, whether it's helping them file for certain things, gain information, gain access to legal, attorneys, etc. There's so much that the organization does. Rodrigo is at the top of it, and we're going to learn all about his life and his journey and sort of all the work that he's done within the organization to basically turn it into this like lab, this incubator, if you will, of kind of immigration tech products and services that are geared towards providing immigrant justice. So this is a really long intro. Before we jump in, I do want to give a huge thank you to the main sponsor of the show, Lex Reception. For those of you who may not know Lex Reception, they're a legal intake, reception, and client support service. So they work with immigration law firms and they provide 24/7 specialists that can answer phone calls and emails and folks that fill out forms that are interested in your services. The idea is that as a law firm, this way you don't miss any prospects that may be reaching out to you over the weekend, or you're busy and you just didn't get a chance to get back to them and then they go somewhere else. So Lex Reception provides you with that. They also provide you with folks that are like sales people. They can go out and reach out proactively to somebody who has reached out to your firm. Instead of responding to their email, maybe you can email them back. And that's what Lex Reception folks can do. They have integrations with various tools like Clio and Practice Panther and LawPay and a lot of software that immigration lawyers are already using. And for listeners of the GMI Rocket Show, they offer $250 off their first month of service. So there's a link in the show notes. Click on that. Or if you want to reach out to them separately, just tell them that you found them on the GMI Rocket Show for that deal. So without further ado, like 10 minutes into this episode, Rodrigo, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you and learn more about what you're doing.
It's so good to talk to you, Roman. And I feel like I need Lex Reception. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, they're a great organization. They've been supporting the show for a little bit, and I've met them at a few conferences like before the sponsorship even happened. Just really nice people that just provide a great service for firms. And to me, it felt like the right kind of organization to help support the show. So I'll connect you with them if that helps. But today's about you. I'm excited to learn. Like I said in the intro, there's not a lot of organizations naturally that do what you do. You've combined sort of the if you will pro bono world with technology. I mean, and really building technology in the cutting edge way. So I'm excited to get to that. But first, as always, I do love to go back and get the story of the guest. You're a little bit of a unique guest because you're not the co-founder, if you will, or the founder of Justicia Lab. But as we'll get to, you have an interesting name that you call yourself there, and you did help build really it to what it is today. But share a little bit about your story. I know that you are an immigrant. You came to the U.S. when you were a young kid, like myself. If you can, share a little bit about sort of where did you come from? How did you get here? Maybe what was that experience like as a kid?
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for the time. It's so nice to just hang out on a Friday and talk. I'm an immigrant from Mexico originally. It's funny because like every immigrant story is different, but I feel like my telling of my immigrant story changes each time. So let's see what version we get. But I came here as a kid. My dad is an engineer. So my dad is kind of like an OG technologist. He was like super into the internet before the internet was like this big thing. And he, went to the UNAM. Shout out to all the Pumas lovers out there, which is sort of the national university in Mexico. That's where I met my mom, who is actually a lawyer. She practiced law, and he was sort of an early adopter in like IT and IT services and networks and using computers to share information, and ended up working in IT basically. So he worked for a lot of you know he worked for the government. He worked for multinationals, and at some point in his career was sponsored basically to come work in the U.S. And so because of him and his interest in this kind of like new field, our whole immigration story basically started, and we were able to all get on a path to citizenship, well, to a green card and then citizenship, and then here we are. I'm now kind of doing combining both IT and also my mom's interest in the law and in the work that we do. So I've never really thought of it in those terms, but recently it's sort of like it just occurred to me that that's sort of one version of the story.
Where did your family move to? When you first came here from Mexico to the States for your dad's work.
Yeah, I grew up in Virginia. So I grew up in Northern Virginia, which is like a big hub for a lot of global IT. Coming out of DARPA and a lot of government investment in the IT sector. Like AOL is there, was founded there. My dad worked at Sprint International. So like a subsidiary of Sprint, focused on like, selling network solutions around the world. So I grew up in Virginia, Nova, for those that know. And I was always sort of exposed to technology really early on. Found a liking for it because obviously you could like play games and like do fun stuff on the internet. But Northern Virginia is sort of where I spent most of my youth. Spent some time in Mexico, sort of back and forth a lot, and then I ended up in New York, where I've been for the past 20 plus years.
When you were, so was your mother an attorney in the U.S. as well, or was she not able to practice?
She wasn't able to practice. No, she was. She worked for the government in Mexico. She worked for the state. I think, equivalent to like a district attorney. Like assistant DA, or like someone who would investigate cases, support the DA or in their prosecution at the local Mexico City level. But she's like tells all these stories of like taking on like really like scary people, sort of. It's like amazing how much they both just like did, in a context that was very different from mine. And in an era that was so difficult in Mexico.
Yeah, and also this was, I'm assuming, like the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, totally.
Different, no internet it wasn't prevalent, and it's just the world was a different place just a few decades ago.
So different. Yeah, and then the 85 earthquake hit, which is a whole other thing in Mexico. And anyway, there's a lot of instability and things that kind of would force people to want to leave. But an interesting story.
Did your family travel quite a bit between the U.S. and Mexico? Like, were you constantly crossing borders and sort of getting, interrogated, if you will,
or
at
my
least
God,
just questioned?
Totally. Every time, and it was like so par for the course. And I'm sure, whatever. I had like a visa, so there's a lot of privilege that I had in being able to just even do that. But totally, you get interrogated, you get harassed, you get second guessed, you get put in these rooms where they're sort of like asking your parents questions that they need your help to interpret, and you are a child helping your parents interpret, helping them not feel scared, like the whole system is messed up and broken on so many levels. And it's bad even for the people who like have supposed authority or like permission to migrate in and out. So it's really rough. And I know this, but it just goes without saying that it's a pretty terrible system that we're all trying to build workarounds to address. And obviously, you know this as well. But yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a challenge. I mean, thinking about, it's funny, my family came here from Ukraine. We came as refugees when the Soviet Union collapsed, and we were sort of able to come. But we never really, I guess maybe we didn't travel too much. And we definitely didn't go across land borders. I do remember the citizenship question being questioned by INS at the time. And I remember working with my parents to help them memorize the Pledge of Allegiance, because you have
Oh
to,
my
I mean,
God.
at least at the
Yeah.
time. And I was like, how do you not know this? And we all learned it in school, because my, elementary school brain, it's just ingrained in you. And I remember my parents feeling kind of like nervous about it. I also remember the INS Zoom asking me if I have any scars on my body. I mean, I don't know if it was about whether or not there's abuse in the home or whatever it might be. I was like 6 or 7. And I remember being scared to answer the question, because even though the answer was no, it just, and I can't imagine. And that's just such an easier situation than what you're describing, where you're, I guess, sort of like in secondary inspection, or maybe if it's not that serious, at the very least they're questioning your parents, who are your guide, your guiding light, and your caretakers turn to you, young Rodrigo, who speaks probably better English maybe than them at that time, because you grew up here, I mean, I'm assuming. And then they were asking you to translate. That's that sounds tough. That sounds rough for sure.
Yeah. And again, I'm sure anyone listening like has their own version of that. If they,
Yep.
spend some time crossing borders. And yeah, it's a bad system we have.
So on a different front, do you, as a kid, as a child, I know that you're sort of an entrepreneur, I think, if you will. And of course, we'll get to this story. Like, if you've heard of that term, like an entrepreneur within a larger organization. I mean, I would argue that you have a very entrepreneurial mind, and sort of, the way you think about things. Were you the kind of kid, growing up in Nova, maybe going back and forth, that was like the lemonade stand kind of kid? Like, were you working as a kid? Did you want to work as a kid? Did you want to do little hustles, little jobs when you were younger?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did some like kid jobs that were probably
Mm,
like, I don't even know if I was allowed to do these jobs. I would like distribute flyers,
mhm.
put them in people's mailbox for some guy. That was like a very hard job because of like, it was like a lot of walking in hot weather in like
Yeah.
suburbs. But I think definitely someone that was like tinkering, definitely someone that was like coming up with stuff and trying to do it. Yeah, always like in the science competition,
Mhm.
making some random thing. So I think I had that kind of like, let's make something and let's try things out kind of attitude. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
I like
which
to
is like common. Yeah.
but the interesting thing is, I like to ask that question of my guests, and some people are like, yeah, I've been, selling business basketball
Yeah.
cards since I was a kid, and they're very entrepreneurial. And others, I mean, I think myself included, I may have had always ideas for businesses, but I never did it. I never took any steps. I didn't fancy myself an entrepreneur as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. And now that I, started a business or multiple businesses, it just feels so natural to me. And I always find it interesting how some people either learn that about themselves and lean into it when they're younger, and other people just sort of, you go the straight and narrow. You study, you go to school, you don't take risks, if you will, by starting a business, but then they get to it eventually. So I always find it interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, I think maybe an equivalent. I definitely wasn't like, I'm gonna put some money towards this and we're gonna make a profit. I was definitely more on the like, I'm gonna be in student council, or I'm
Hmm.
gonna sign up for like the Model UN. I'm gonna like do. I mean, it's not entrepreneurial in that way, but I think it's like, I'm gonna put myself out there
Hmm.
in front of others to try to do something, collectively. So I think maybe it's like the nonprofit version of like of like an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you want to create something out of nothing, which is what a business is, which is what policy change is. I mean, it's a leadership mentality, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. So great. So then I guess you moved to New York. I know you went to NYU for undergrad. Is that when you moved to New York, or did you moved to New York earlier than
No,
that?
I moved. No, I moved for college. I moved here to
Okay.
study, and I just fell
How
in love and
how
stayed.
was that?
I came here right after 9/11,
Mm,
which is like a whole. I don't know if you remember, but like
hmm.
the city was still in that moment a little bit. I remember rent downtown was really cheap, so I was like, as a student, you're like, sure, I'll live, you know, like on Water Street or like
Wow.
or like John Street for like very little. And now we're finding that like the air quality wasn't great. So
Right.
it was different. Um, Definitely like a trip in that like you only New York from like movies and like driving around the East Village, seeing yellow cabs and seeing like a classic New York stoop. Like it just like brings back like Ghostbusters, like
Hmm.
all these kind of like I don't know New York scenes. But New York has been like many people, it's sort of like this place of possibility and of like imagination. And I think it's what's kept me here. It just feels like it does feel like that place that you can constantly reinvent in and constantly um, kind of make your own.
So, and I know you studied. It's funny you studied economics and philosophy. I also double majored in financial economics and philosophy. So
Oh
we have
wow.
yeah, we have quite similar educational backgrounds.
Oh cool. Were
And
you in the city too?
I was in upstate New York, Binghamton
Okay.
University.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I wanted to go to NYU. I wanted to go to the business school, but they like waitlisted
Oh,
me, and so I said, you know what?
CERN.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I think you're
In
better off.
hindsight, yeah, totally. In hindsight, I'm really happy I did financial economics because it's more theoretical. I think
Hmm.
business schools, I mean, they're all great, obviously, and Stern is a renowned school, but they teach you the stuff that you kind of learn at work anyway. If you go work in banking
Hmm.
or in finance, but you're not going to learn econometric theory at a bank. But I think knowing
Yeah.
that is actually really good just from a intellectual perspective. So yeah, I definitely loved that studying, loved studying that. I know that you kind of got into support, like working with the immigrant community. Was it while at NYU, or was this when you graduated as like a post grad sort of program?
Yeah, while at NYU, I started working at the law school at NYU Law. I was sort of like in my head pre-law, right? I was
Mm,
like part of the undergraduate law society, um, and into kind of like thinking about policy and the legal system. And I started working at the NYU Law School at this place called the Center for Community Problem Solving, which is not around anymore. But at that point, they were doing a study of sort of the health of Mexican immigrants in New York.
mm,
So it was, trying to understand health outcomes with vis-a-vis the policy, policy framework at the time, which is still very much the same. Or like if you're undocumented or of a certain community or class, like you don't have access to healthcare. So you just kind of like work yourself sick.
hmm.
Um, and in that capacity, I was like all over New York City talking to new arrivals about when was the last time they got a checkup, when was the last time they, you know, uh, had access to healthcare, et cetera. And I learned about all the Mexican communities in New York City, and got very interested in the Mexican community in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, where I live now.
Mm,
And through that experience, I got involved with a nonprofit called the Mixteca organization, which is alive and well and doing awesome stuff today. Started teaching English there. My now wife was my girlfriend at the time. She started teaching English there. She kind of brought me there, to be honest. I was,
mm,
we're kind of like uh, co-English teachers. And then right after, as I was graduating college, totally not really clear on what I was going to do next, they opened up the role of ED, of executive director. And because I was like young and naive, I was like, I could do that, sure. And then I did that for like a couple of years, but it was totally like I had no prior work experience. It
wow.
was this total
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
You stepped into a leadership role right as you graduated college, basically.
It was weird. It was weird. And it was like a lot of pressure, and it was like so humbling at the same time. And yeah, I got into fundraising and program design and like dealing with a board and thinking about these big problem areas in a city context, but also like nationally. So it was a super interesting opportunity. It was like I think the equivalent of like, I don't know, like a nonprofit management like course, but like in real life. And to be honest, it kind of like wore me out. That was like a tough job to have so young.
Wow.
Yeah, but it really kind of exposed me very quickly to all the issues that migrants face in New York City, but obviously also nationally.
And so is that when you kind of went over to grad school? Because I can't imagine doing that kind of, it's actually amazing. Obviously, look, if they took you, right? I mean, you were teaching English there. They obviously knew you. They saw the way you worked. I suppose that they trusted that you could do a good job, which is really incredible that as a 22-year-old-ish, you're executive director of a nonprofit organization. Yeah, that's amazing. But did you feel afterwards? I know you said it wore you out. Did you feel afterwards like this is what I want to do? Maybe I need to take a break, but this is what I want to do. Or do you remember thinking, this was an interesting experience. Maybe let me veer back to law school. Like that would be a point where somebody says, "Great, I want to do nonprofit law," or something like that. Do you kind of remember where your mindset was at the time?
I think definitely felt like I needed a break. Definitely wanted more perspective. Like once you're ED of a nonprofit, like you can't, there's no other job within the nonprofit to take truly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I wanted more perspective, I wanted to pull back a little bit. I think I did try to go to law school and like failed at the LSAT. And so I was like, why do I really want to go to law school? Do I really want to practice law? And that's when I sort of pivoted to, I think what I really wanted to uncover at that point was like to understand, inequality, structural inequality, to understand, migration within those terms. So I went to grad school to study economic history, which is like what I never really got at NYU. At NYU, they're like, this is Keynesian economics, this is what we're doing, or this is like, there's no preamble, right? There's no like, there are differing economic theories, there are differing attitudes towards like building wealth and building prosperity. And so I think that's what I was hungry for, and that's what I tried to kind of gain more perspective on. That's how I ended up with this master's degree in economics.
And that was at Stanford?
No, that was at the London School of Economics at the LSE.
Oh, London School.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so you got a student visa. So you went through an immigration process there,
I went through that. Yeah. And that process is, there's a lot wrong with the UK immigration system, but you know what? It was digital first from the get-go.
Wow.
It made it seem, and this was like 2010, 2011, something like that.
Wow.
Which is kind of novel to me. Yeah.
And so that's really cool. I wanted to just a quick pause here. We've got a comment from Arun saying, "Great initiative, Rodrigo, a great tool that truly changes lives." So we're definitely going to get into what you're building, but he says thanks Roman for the podcast, and thank you Arun for the comment, and obviously Rodrigo for being here. I feel like it's fascinating, to think about. Now we're in 2024 and we're still talking about digitizing immigration on the US side. And I get it. I mean, US immigration is the biggest beast in the world, probably, as far as immigration comes. But the reality is sometimes we forget that this isn't the only way, right? That there are other countries that are taking steps forward in terms of digitization, automation of certain aspects of immigration, and I think about that a lot because, I'm building tech in the space, you're building tech in the space, many people are, but there is definitely a wall that is hit when the actual application has to be done, for example, on paper, right, to the government, so do whatever you need to do in the background digitally. But so really hope that changes. So it's cool to hear that even, what was this, 2012-ish, or
Yeah, 2010, something like that. I can't. The
2010.
years
Yeah,
blur, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It was like an
um,
online forum, and that's how I did everything. Yeah.
so I know that you came after, after you spent time there, you actually came back and you worked. I mean, you have a really incredible background. So I know sometimes they'll skip over people's career steps and their
Yeah.
notches in their belt, but I think yours just so perfectly leads into what you're doing now. So I know you came back and you worked for the city of New York.
Yeah.
And it looks like it wasn't necessarily with respect to immigrants per se, but that you ended up working with a lot of immigrant communities, helping them, I suppose, grow with their businesses, find financial or economic opportunities. Is that right?
That's spot on. Yeah, I came back and I worked at the New York City Department of Small Business Services, doing like access to small business capital. And then, I started in the Bloomberg administration and then ended in De Blasio, like mid De Blasio. And in that time, developed initiatives to help immigrant entrepreneurs, to help women entrepreneurs, to build cooperatively owned businesses, which is like something that I'm really also passionate about. But yeah, it was like not dealing with immigration directly, more about how to deliver programs, services, trainings to communities at scale. And in that point, New York City's like everything you do has to like, the scale that you're going for is in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. So it was pretty awesome to just work in those administrations, to be honest. Like they both had their own pros and cons, but I think there is no, in my view, I it's a fantastic employer, the city of New York. If anyone, ever thinks about government, I highly recommend it. And I think at the time, the caliber of like skill sets of ideas was very high. And I still know a lot of people that work in government that do really great things. And yeah, I think it was a good training in like delivering programs and products at scale, basically.
Mhm. Do you feel, this is a question that I would love to hear your thoughts on. You were working on economic development, business opportunity, and growth. When you worked with immigrant entrepreneur or maybe aspiring entrepreneurs, if you will, now that you came from, first of all, you came from an immigrant. You are an immigrant. Your family was had that story. You worked with immigrants in your prior roles, and now you're sort of doing this business development. Did you? What are your thoughts about how immigrants approach business ownership and creation in the US? And I ask this specifically because, you know, there's so much talk about, obviously, depending on where people's political leanings are, et cetera, closing the borders or immigrants are taking jobs, et cetera. And then the flip side says, no, wait, immigrants create jobs. Immigrants are driven. Immigrants come here and they work so hard because they're grateful for the opportunity. And look, there's truth in both sides. I mean, that's the reality, right?
Yeah.
But it really depends on what you want to work towards as a high level future and vision for the country and for immigration in the US. What was your experience? Like, did you find that the immigrants that you worked with were, passionate about trying to do something and create opportunities not for themselves, but their community? Like, what was the mindset that you saw them have as business owners in New York?
I'm going to just a quick preface here in that I personally think that the right to movement is like a human right, that it doesn't need to come with economic benefit to the country, and that
Yep.
people move for different reasons, to escape persecution, to escape poverty, um, for new opportunities, to reconnect with family, etc. Um, but, you know, that being said, the statistics and the data on like immigrants being more entrepreneurial than native borns populations is like super clear. The there's just this, you're risk taking when crossing the border. You have to make it. You have to make it, right? There are people that depend on you. There are people you might need to be paying back for the trip that you made. So you're gonna work your ass off. I don't know if we can say ass on. You're gonna
Yeah,
work your
sure.
butt off on. You're gonna work your butt off, if you can, you're going to put money towards a business so that you're getting the most out of the money that you're saving up, and that we just see that time and time and again. When I was in New York, and you see this in any small business you walk into, more than half of New York City's businesses are owned by non-native born individuals, so immigrants, right? Again, immigrants open businesses at 2 times the likelihood than native born populations in New York City. Those are New York City statistics. And I just think the drive is there, the risk taking is there, and it's sort of why immigrants come here too, to a large degree. Like there's potential, or there's opportunity that they could not pursue back home that is now sort of pent up, or needs a different context to really grow in. And so, and you don't have to be a small business owner to like show that level of entrepreneurship. You see it in immigrant workers who do the toughest jobs in this country, who innovate on the job site, who unfortunately are getting underpaid systemically and having wages stolen, which we can talk about more. But this is a huge boon for this country. We get young, skilled workers that come here at their prime working age, work themselves to the bone, and because our system is so backwards, doesn't really provide benefits or retirement or healthcare, they end up aging and retiring back home if they can, or where they came from, or unfortunately in terrible conditions in this country. So it's a surplus advantage for America to have this workforce, this level of just really hardworking and entrepreneurial people coming here to contribute to something that they might not even fully be able to share the fruits of. So coming back to the beginning, you don't have to be a hard worker or an immigrant to want to be in this country, or an entrepreneur. Sorry, you can just want to be a normal person that is escaping poverty or fear. But I think the economic arguments for migration are like overwhelming.
Yeah. And frankly, a lot of people turn to that when they make their decisions, quote unquote, about what they think should be done in with respect to immigration. I think a lot of folks take for granted that escaping a bad situation is a human right, because maybe they never had to, or they don't think about it, etc. So yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. But again, look, it's a win-win, right? Both are true, right? In the sense that yes, you should be allowing people to live here as just average individuals, but the reality is that by allowing immigrants into the country, you do also create an economic advantage. And so yeah, really cool to hear. And I think not many people have your experience. So I was curious on your thoughts there. So before we get to when you finally joined what would become Justicia Lab, yeah, I know you did a couple other little things, but not little things. I mean, you had other jobs, but I wanted to ask you specifically. You worked sort of. It looks like you worked sort of in. You moved away from this sort of city opportunity to kind of developing organizations, sort of like maybe at a higher level. So I know you worked for a public benefits corp called, I guess, Purpose, right? Purpose PBC, and you helped with some creation of digital tools, like in combination with the nonprofit space, which sounds like exactly what you're doing now. But that was sort of like, it sounds like the beginning of that kind of work. What brought you there? Sort of, what did you get out of that opportunity, and how did that maybe shape the way you think about the nonprofit world, where you can now combine technology with this purpose-driven initiative?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad we're going into these. I haven't talked about this like trajectory in a while, but so I left city government to find my purpose at an organization called Purpose now
Mm.
in
Yeah.
in October of 2006. So like, what else happened? Sorry, not 2016. Right? When were the elections?
Yep.
It was
Yeah.
16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
November 2016. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to be honest, the changing political situation was really frightening to me. And so right before the elections, I joined an organization that, in short, helps advocates and nonprofits um, build movements and campaigns. And so this Purpose, worked on the Women's March, for instance. The kind of like famous work, or some of the most famous work, is like helping the ACLU become, you know, not just a stodgy organization for like liberal or attorneys focus on like First Amendment protections, but like a cool hip place, right? Like the ACLU is now. They helped create Everytown for gun safety, or at least rebrand them away from the Mayors Against Illegal Guns, which was the old name that Bloomberg kind of gave to that organization. So they had this history of helping a lot of organizations and campaigns understand their audience, be able to develop visual and written language to speak to that audience, like brand and campaigns to engage those audiences. So I really wanted to get more experience in that work, and I really gained a really great appreciation for, frankly, marketing and like the value of branding, the value of like of audience development,
Mhm.
of messaging. Whereas when I was running a small nonprofit, we weren't focused on that to a large degree. It was like, we just do the work well, and people will pay attention to the work, and that's fine. And that's still
Mhm.
true. But I think there's nonprofits don't have a lot of budget typically to do marketing and audience engagement and sort of movement building. But I think it's increasingly something that we need to think about funding, if funders are out there, because it is important. It does, create change, and it does, deliver a lot of benefits. So that's sort of what I came to learn at Purpose. And
Mm.
Purpose, like you mentioned, uses a lot of tech and builds digital tools to help advocates and supporters of an issue kind of take action more quickly, or do things in different ways.
Yeah, and I could see the through line there. I mean, look, for myself, coming from somebody who's really heavily into, I mean, I love marketing. I think it's fascinating. I think it's ultimately human psychology, and really, no matter how compelling of a cause you have or how compelling of a product or service you have, people need to be sort of nudged into that direction, right? Even though for you it may be a no brainer that you have to help this organization because they're doing something great, or on this side you have this tool that is going to make your life so much easier. It's a no-brainer to you because you're in it, but for folks that you want to use it, it still requires them to change something, to adopt a new tool, to believe in a new cause and donate to it, etc. And people don't change on their own very often. It's usually through some sort of outside influence, and to me that's marketing. It's making a compelling argument for putting their time and energy and perhaps resources into your thing rather than someone else's thing. Um, so I love that. I think it's so cool, right? That's why I love this show, and I love going into such detail, because you start, you're stacking all these chips in such a particular way, and you realize, well, of course you're doing the thing you're doing now. It makes so much sense in the world because of all of the past experiences and how they built on top of each other. Um, we have a really nice comment here from Ana Ortega Villegas, who says, "What a great conversation. Sending a hug to all my fellow American naturalized citizens who are still traumatized from the process and interview." So, it's really an interesting take. I mean, we don't have time to go into this now, but the idea that even the naturalization process, which is such a, it's the goal for so many immigrants, right? I mean, it's the North Star, can still actually, you can come away with some, negative memories and traumatic experiences, even from such a wonderful kind of life event. So appreciate you, Anna, for sharing that, for sharing
Yeah,
that
thanks,
comment.
Anna.
So I want to jump into you joining Immigration Advocates Network. Before we do that, we're talking about now you're sort of transitioning into the tech side of things. I think it's a really great time to just pause and say thank you to the second sponsor of the show, which is DocketWise. For folks who don't know DocketWise, they are an award-winning, all-in-one immigration case management platform. They have best-in-class immigration intake and forms. Their APIs are actually, I think, one of the first, if not the first, immigration tech company to have open APIs. And my company Laborless integrated with them like right away. So that was really cool. And so I think they lead the industry in a lot of different things, including not just technology and growth, but also like their support of the industry. They support this show. They have a great blog. They have a great podcast as well. James Pittman runs that podcast. If folks here don't know him, definitely go watch it. So I appreciate DocketWise for all they do. And so for the folks out there listening, if you are in the market for an immigration case management system, or maybe not, and you just want to learn about others, definitely check out DocketWise. You can follow the link in the show notes, or go to docketwise.com. And if you talk to a sales rep there, let them know you heard about them from the GMI Rocket show. So thank you to those guys. So I want to jump into, basically what you're currently doing today. You joined Immigration Advocates Network, IAN, in 2018. And IAN still exists, but now it's sort of part of this bigger thing called Justicia Lab. Can you talk a little bit about maybe that transition to IAN and, what that was like for you, and I guess eventually how that turned into what is now Justicia Lab, where like your entrepreneurial instinct said, wait a minute, let's build something new or different or bigger internally. Like, what was that story?
Yeah, so in 2000, my God, my years are all messed up, but at some point, I was approached by a recruiter who was hiring for a director at a program called the Immigration Advocates Network, a program of pro bono net. And that should be kind of clear that, Justicia Lab, like the Immigration Advocates Network or IAN, are both programs of pro bono net, which is a sort of a larger organization that works at the intersection of access to justice and technology. And so they were hiring a new director for IAN, which, like the name says, is it's a network of immigrant advocates, and it's a nonprofit network that currently has over 11,000 members of advocates, and we use that term broadly, right? Lawyers, non-lawyers, law students, people that just are helping immigrants. And so IAN was founded in 2007 to become this sort of third party for all the advocates that are affiliated with either clinic or part of ALA but not part of other groups, to come together and collaborate. And in doing that and creating this space for collaboration or this shared infrastructure, IAN also started looking at other opportunities for kind of shared infrastructure and spaces for collaboration, and created something like the immigrationlawhelp.org, which is a national directory of all of the nonprofit immigrant legal service providers around the country. And so I came to IAN, the Immigration Advocates Network, 6 years ago. So it's 2018.
2018.
And I think early on, just saw us as not just a network of immigrant advocates that sometimes builds technology, but as a lab, right? As a community of people that know, the immigration problem area, know technology, and that can kind of help connect the dots between advocates and technologists. And so that's really what we do. We think about problems facing nonprofit immigration service providers, think about potential solutions, co-design potential solutions with them, prototype them. And if we think there's a there, we build them and we try to scale them. And IAN had done this prior to me coming there, right? And it built really great tools like Citizenship Works, which is a tool to help folks become U.S. citizens, like a TurboTax for the N400. IMI, which is a tool that helps folks understand their eligibility for humanitarian or family-based relief without giving any personally identifiable information or like
Mhm.
having to sit down with a lawyer. So they were already incubating and building tools, and so I think we just recognized that we needed to lean into that identity more, and did
Mhm.
so in 2022.
And so when you the tools you said some of them are for it sounds like some of them are for these nonprofit organizations that are helping immigrants as counsel, I suppose. Sometimes, I mean, I worked at well, my family was helped by Highest when we came to the U.S. and then I interned at Highest. I mean, they're a large organization. There are other Catholic Charities is a really big
Yeah,
one. But there are many others. There's small ones, there are local ones. I mean, there's so many people doing this work. So part of what you were doing at Ian was building tools to help them, and then it sounds like also building tools for the foreign nationals directly, so where they can do
exactly.
some sort of fill out some information and see if they're eligible for something, etc. So, but at the time, those tools all existed, and they were under pro bono net. There wasn't really a home for them, if you will. And so it sounds like you were saying, let's combine this, let's brand this, let's lean into that, let's brand this as what became, I guess, Justicia Lab, which is such a great name, right? A lab for justice, right? A
Hmm.
lab where you're tinkering, you're building things. So how would you describe? I guess you sort of already did how you describe Justicia Lab today. Maybe I should ask you, what are you working on today with Justicia Lab? You've got
Yeah,
immigranthelp.org. You've got IMI. I mean, you've got some of these things that are already there. By the way, for folks who are listening or watching to this, go to justicialab.org, and then you can see all the different, you know, all the different things that you guys have been working on. But yeah, what are you like working on now? I guess with the lab.
yeah. So like you mentioned, many of the initiatives that the lab currently leads were sort of in existence, either associated with Ian or Pro Bono Net. And so what we've done is sort of like thought of them as a suite of services, right? That either immigrants or their advocates can access. Um, since I joined the lab, we've launched a number of new initiatives. One that I'm super proud of is called Reclamo, which is a digital tool to combat wage theft. Oh, I love these effects. It is
Yeah.
not a tool to help immigrants navigate immigration law. So it's like a big break, right? It's a tool to help immigrants find workplace justice, to reclaim stolen wages. So Reclamo
Mhm.
has been around for about 18 months in New York State and has helped file, over $1.5 million in wage theft claims. But
Wow.
this is us sort of recognizing that immigrants don't just have legal problems related to their immigration case; they have like workplace issues, they have housing issues, and so we want to be able to support them if we feel like we have an ability to in those legal issue areas as well. So Reclamo is a big one that we're working on, that we're hoping to expand this year and next. Um, we're also working with some partners on sort of what we call universal intake in case referral system. A lot of the people we work with don't have all these great CRM programs that a lot of the private for-profit attorneys
Mhm.
have. Um, and in the event that they do, the systems don't talk to one another. So we're trying to build something that helps
Hmm.
people connect the dots and helps migrants more directly collaborate with advocates. And then the last big thing that we're building is we're bringing AI and Gen AI into a lot of the workflows that we already
Hmm.
have, but also building AI first tools that sort of using this technology from the get go are kind of built around them. And we're doing that through our participation in Google.org's Gen AI Accelerator for Social Impact.
Hmm.
And through that, we're building uh, an AI powered assistant for asylum seekers and new arrivals. So the tool does a lot of things that we currently do, right? It helps you identify your eligibility for a form of relief, finds a lawyer for you that might be able to help you. But it also helps you understand complicated paperwork. Like, if you're a new arrival and you get this notice to appear, you don't speak English, or you're a
Right.
minor, like you don't know how to navigate that. And that
Right.
paper and following the instructions in that can mean the difference between like status or being scheduled for removal, right, for deportation. So we're building a tool now that allows you to take a photo of your NTA, have that image summarized, translated, and safely have those values from that NTA populate some next steps for you, like confirm your court date. Let's do a change of address. Let's connect you to a lawyer locally. So that we're really excited about that, and that product is going to be launching this fall. But we've already done a lot of testing, and are super excited about it.
That's really cool, and congrats on the Google, working with the Google Lab.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah. So does that mean that so your team has sort of folks that are collaborating with Google engineers as part of this program? Like, does Google have folks allocated to working with organizations like Justicia Lab on this?
It's a super awesome fellowship. It's 21 global nonprofits that are, interested in using Gen AI for social impact. We are one of these 21 nonprofits. Like the World Bank is in this, and
Wow.
International Rescue Committees, and so like a lot of really big organizations are in there. And we're obviously not that big, but we punch, sometimes above our own weight, maybe. But yeah, no, we have a great. It comes with financial support. It comes with in-kind support from Google team members. We have a Google squad that we meet with weekly. And then they pull in different folks from the organization. We are not required to use Google products. I just want to make this clear. This is not like a product endorsement. They're tech agnostic, but they're really helping us sort of scale up our ability to build AI powered tools, know how to use Gen AI safely. And through this initiative, we've actually launched Justicia Lab AI, which is an initiative to do what we've been doing traditionally, but for folks that are interested in AI and bringing Gen AI, especially into their organizations. So we're doing workshops and webinars to educate nonprofit practitioners on these new technologies. We built an advisory group of technologists and legal service providers in the nonprofit space to kind of learn from each other and help, inform each other of risks and opportunities. And we're also co-designing and prototyping new tools like the one I mentioned.
Wow.
So we're super excited about that.
That's amazing. And I love it because I feel like very often you see, on the nonprofit technology or tech stack is typically, lighter than the for-profit, just because it costs money to have tools in your practice and to have the, sort of the cutting edge stuff. And so this is great. I mean, it's unfortunate that, you sort of have to, but that's what it is, right? Nonprofits play a really, really important, like yours, organizations like yours play a really important role in arming, if you will, the nonprofits that are doing the work on the ground, that have the advocates and the lawyers and community leaders helping immigrants. So I think it's super awesome. And it's such a different, mindset too, when you're a nonprofit versus a for-profit. I mean, the driving force behind it is not just making more sales. I mean, obviously you want more people using your tools, more organizations, but I guess the purpose there is a big driving force too, which is inspiring,
Thanks. Go ahead. No, I just want to say, like, even though we are focused on short to medium term, like solving for these issues, like we can't miss the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is like comprehensive immigration reform.
Right.
The bigger picture is like a more streamlined, plain language, like system that understands the diversity of the communities coming here and speaks their language and makes it incredibly accessible and easy to use. So like in reality, we're doing all this work to help people navigate this terrible web of laws. But the real aim needs to be, the kind of comprehensive reform that we all need to make the work that we're doing obsolete, to be honest. So we work in partnership with folks that are advocating at the federal level, but we know that our lane is to help people kind of meet some of these resource constraints that they're facing now when it comes to helping people in need.
So as a kind of a final question, I typically ask somewhat of a different question, but given where, what you do in the sort of nonprofit world, what would be the best thing that listeners of this show or viewers of this show could do? So yes, it's immigration lawyers that listen, but also others that are interested in immigration, people who work, paralegals, all sorts of people in the space. What should they do, or what can they do to support, you guys and or just your mission?
Definitely go to justicialab.org and learn more about us. Tell people about us. We don't have a big marketing budget, even though I just talked a lot about the importance of marketing. A lot of everything we do is free. So if you are working with vulnerable populations and you need to give them information or help them find a lawyer or allow them to, file for citizenship or understand if they're eligible for asylum, like send them to our website, send them to IMI, immigrationlawhelp.org, Citizenship Works. These are all free tools that people can use to get started, right? We're not going to say that we can get everyone a lawyer, that we can solve everyone's case, but for folks that are that have no information, this is as we offer at least a starting point. So learn more about us, tell your friends about us, reach out to me if you are interested in collaborating, if you want to help us understand the problem that no one's addressing, if you want to bring in one of our tools into your organization or think you could help us build something, like let's work together. We're a nonprofit. We don't have all the capital in the world. We're very much and our work depends on collaboration, and it has since before I even started here. So we're an open door for anyone that wants to work in partnership and wants to work to support immigrants.
Snaps. I love that. Well, the link to your LinkedIn bio is in the show notes. The LinkedIn to Justicia Lab is also in the show notes. So for folks who are listening or watching, please do, check them out and, support however you can. By the way, can people donate as well? Like, can individuals donate, or do you
People
only
can
take,
always donate.
institutional?
No,
Okay.
I take all of the money that you have. No. You can definitely donate. justicialab.org /donate.
Okay.
It means a lot. Yes.
Cool. All right. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. No. Thank you. That should have been my ask as well.
Well, Rodrigo, thank you. This has been just awesome. I wish we had another hour to talk about this.
Thank you,
everything you're
Roman.
doing, but I really hope I encourage everyone to go and check out, connect with you on LinkedIn, check out everything you guys are working on, and especially for AILA members. You're very active in AILA. I know you're not an immigration attorney yourself, but the organization is a big part of the AILA network. So I hope folks come check you out. So yeah, Rodrigo, thank you again. And
thank you, Roman.
I hope to maybe have you back at some point. Yeah, thank you.
Let's
Likewise.
do it. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Awesome. Well, as a quick thank you to the viewers, amazing episode. Again, I very infrequently get a chance to have this sort of a, inspiring conversation that is not about building a business necessarily, but really about building an organization that helps people. Although, I would argue that everyone in immigration, we're not doing this for the bucks, right? We're doing this because we really do want to help the industry. So whether it's supporting lawyers or being an attorney and supporting folks trying to go through the immigration process. So really, that was an awesome episode. Again, check out justicialab.org. And of course, thank you. I just want to say thank you again to Lex Documents as the main sponsor of the show. And quickly, they are a legal intake and reception service. They support immigration law firms by providing you with effectively a staff of folks who can take in phone calls and emails and form, people who fill out forms. They can respond to them. They are trained to respond to legal inquiries and immigration inquiries. So check them out to help you support your practice, whether you're growing or you just need a little bit of extra help, because you want to not have to reply to inquiries on weekends, for example, or in the evenings. But if someone comes in, how great is it to have, a receptionist reach back out to them immediately? So check out lexreception.com. Again, link to them is in the show notes. Thank you to them for supporting the show. Thanks everyone for being here. Amazing episode. See you next week for the next episode. And of course, as always, stay safe and have a wonderful weekend. Peace out.